Shalom, shalom, mishpocha. Welcome to another edition of Ray Bash's Ramblings. This is Rabbi Yehuda here, coming at you. First of all, I want to just say Lashana Tova, and hope you have an easy fast for Yom Kippur. The subject of this video is Sukkot, specifically a spiritual Sukkot. I'm going to talk about the debate that's kind of raging in Messianic and Netzari circles regarding, is it best to keep the letter of the law or the spirit of the law? When do you keep the letter of the law and when do you keep the spirit of the law? And also the concept, the rabbinic concept that even Yeshua consented to in Matthew 12:11 and Luke 14:5 is the rabbinic edict of life over law. In other words, if it's a life or death situation, you can temporarily suspend the commandments in order to save a life. And the specific example given in Matthew and Luke is when an animal falls into a ditch on the Sabbath. We just leave it there to die because it would be work taking it out. No, Yeshua said, which one of you wouldn't go and save your animal? So it's a concept of life over law. So in regards to Sukkot, how does one take these concepts and how does one apply these concepts to their lives? Why am I bringing this up is because here for the past 5 years, I've lived in the Great White North of Canada, where every time Sukkot rolls around, the weather is pretty inclement. It's not agreeable to building a sukkah and sleeping outside and etc. etc. Faithfully, for 5 years, ever since I've lived up here, I have made a rabbinically and biblically kosher sukkah that has 3 sides. It's open facing the east, and it's a leafy bough roof and everything. And I use the concept of life over law. I don't camp out and sleep in it because it'd be pretty much impossible to do that. But I do spend as much time out there as I possibly can. I'll eat, I'll pray, I'll read, I'll worship, etc., etc. What I have found is due to the weather patterns up here, I can only get 2 days of good use out of that sukkah at best. Why? Because it's either raining to beat the band, or it's harshly, dangerously cold, or there's gale force winds that tear the sukkah apart. So, I'm supposed to rejoice. It's a mitzvah to rejoice during these high holy days. How can I rejoice in Sukkot when I can't enjoy the sukkah? And where does God and how does God get the glory if I only spend 2 days out of the 7 out in the sukkah? So I've been rolling this around in my head. I've been debating this, and so this is what I've decided this year. Because let me preface it with Sukkot is my absolute favorite, most favorite high holy day of them all, especially all year and during the fall high holy days. And I've spent a lot of time and a lot of money each year building a new sukkah each time and putting furnishings out there, only to get ruined and destroyed by the weather. So this year, and I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for this, but I don't care. In the words of the 1980s and 1990s Christian rock band Lust Control, I'm used to flack. I wear flak jackets. I listen to Roberta Flack. I'm used to getting flack. So may Hashem be the judge between me and my observance of the mitzvot. Thankfully, you're not my judge. So anyway, what I've decided to do is I'm going to pitch my sukkah indoors. I'm gonna pitch my tents indoors and build a sukkah indoors where my door is facing the eastern picture window. That way I can stay all 7 days in the sukkah. I can literally sleep in it, eat in it, study in it, pray in it, worship, etc. I can live in it like we're supposed to, like the mitzvot. I'm going to keep the spirit of the law this year and the letter of the law whenever applicable and whenever I possibly can. But I don't get much joy, and God doesn't get much glory if I build a sukkah outside, only to spend a couple days at best out there, and it gets destroyed by the weather anyway. So I'm going to build my sukkah indoors. No, it's not going to have a leafy bowed roof, but that's a rabbinic edict. It's just hinted at in the Torah. Okay, now the next big issue is, what about the lulav and etrog? Well, thanks to the revolution in Egypt, where most of the lulavs and etrogs come from, besides Israel itself, you have to pay out the yin-yang. You've got to pay an arm and a leg to have it shipped to you. I have to worry about customs and it coming across the border, etc., etc. And I reused my palm from last year, and I began starting my change last year where here I would buy a lemon because it's the closest thing to an etrog. And we do have willow, and we do have types and species of myrtle here, so I use those. But today this year I'm gonna do it totally different. I'm not gonna worry about the palm. Why? Because palm branches are irrelevant to where I live here in the diaspora. So is there any relatives to the palm branch here in my part of Canada? Well, yes, there is. It's called corn. Believe it or not, corn and such things as bamboo, they are all relatives of the palm. So I'm going to use corn because Sukkot is a harvest festival. Why not use the species that are relevant to where I live? You see, the Torah was written specifically in mind with one to observe the mitzvot in the Torah in the promised land of Israel. Well, most of us don't live in the land of Israel. And even though Hashem in his foreknowledge knew that many of his children would live in the diaspora and live in areas that are inclement weather-wise when it comes to the fall festivals, he knew that we would have to adapt. And so thank God for grace. Thank God for wiggle room within the Torah. I'm going to fulfill the mitzvot to the very best of my ability. And sometimes that means keeping the spirit of the law as opposed to the letter of the law. So anyways, I'm going to use corn this year because it's relevant to my area, it's related to the palm, and I'm going to take the willow and the myrtle from the species that exist around here, which is not the exact type that grow in Israel. And instead of a lemon, instead of an etrog, I'm going to use an apple. Why? Because it's a harvest fruit here, and it's a fragrant fruit. So it fulfills the biblical requirement, even though it doesn't fulfill the rabbinical requirement. But I'm not worried about that. And I'm going to use that to wave and rejoice before Hashem this year. So I expect this year to be one of the best Sukkots ever. And I pray and hope that this video will help those living in the diaspora to feel free and to feel that freedom to be able to celebrate Sukkot in the way I'm celebrating it, because I'm sure many of you who live in Canada and other parts of the world where the weather's not the nicest in the fall, you ran into frustration year after year when you celebrate Sukkot, and you make the best of it, but it still could be better. But let me remind you of a verse that Rav Shaul said in Romans 8:1. It says, "There is therefore now no condemnation to them which are in Messiah Yeshua, who walk not after the flesh, keeping the rabbinic edicts, but after the Spirit, after the Ruach HaKodesh." So sometimes it is appropriate and sometimes it is best to keep the spirit of the law rather than the letter of the law. So Chag Sameach Sukkot. Hope you guys have a great Sukkot this year. Usually I do revelations from my sukkah. I may do that this year, I may not. Who knows? We'll see. But Shalom and Shavuot Tov.